Hello, welcome to the Preambull, your every so often digest of all things hobby. My name is Grumsworth, this is Burlokk, and join us today as we dissect a Magic the Gathering card submitted by one of you. We go through our hobby journals and also discuss some of our favourite new releases. How's your hobby found you this week, Burlokk?
My hobby's been pretty good actually, Grumsworth. Yes, thank you. I've been working on a new project. Oh, well, I hate to say it, it's a commission project actually.
Is it really?
It is, yeah, some Silver Templars I've been working on. They, as I understand it, are a sort of new design on a chapter, a new Primaris chapter.
That's right, yeah. They were featured in the
And
recent White Dwarf magazine.
That's it. They were, yeah. Nice color scheme, silver, black, and yellow. I've been working on some Silver Templars. I've just done a squad of 5. Well, nearly finished them. Just got to do their bases and apply some iconography to the miniatures, whether that be through decals or some freehand. Don't quite know yet, but
Very good.
I've been working on those. They've been coming together really nicely, actually. I've not. At one point, I tried experimenting with a slightly new product, one of the Vallejo Washes.
Oh, yes.
The big sort of, they call it dipping formula. And it didn't go quite to plan. So there was a very minor setback, but that's okay. Got over that. Managed to reel it back in with a careful application of an ultrasonic cleaner. They were initially sprayed with a gunmetal army painter, which has got a slight glossy finish to it actually, which at first I was quite worried about because I thought maybe the paint will struggle to key onto this primer.
Okay, yeah.
But actually it's perfectly fine. Just a few thin coats over the top and you're good to go. But what it did allow me to do was to take back some of the work I'd done. It was essentially your edit undo.
Very good, yeah.
And that was quite good. I didn't know how well it would work or if it would work at all, but it did. So I was able to revert a little bit of the overeager washing that I'd put over the top of some of these miniatures.
Overzealous washing, folks.
Oh, overzealous washing. Tell you what. Yeah, nothing worse. But they turned out to be perfectly fine afterwards. And I brought them back to a good standard. I've now got all their details on, all their highlights on. And so far, from the pictures that I've shown my customer, my client and friend, must be said, he's very happy with them. So far, so good. Once they're all based and those final designs are placed on there, I think will be good for the next group of miniatures because he wants me to do a few of them.
Okay, so this is going to be an ongoing project.
It will be, yeah, I think it will be. I mean, provided he's happy with the end result, obviously. I'm sure he will be. I'm happy with them so far anyway. I mean, that's really been the majority of my hobby thinking and my hobby project this week has been this particular group of 5 Primaris Assault Intercessors.
Assault Intercessors, yeah. They're the easy to build ones from Indominus, yeah?
I think it's the same kit as the Indomitus, yeah. I think are they the only ones available at the moment? Or is there another kit? I don't know if there's a couple of versions out.
I think there is I think there's a multi-part version as well.
Okay, yeah. I think these are the easy to build, clip together situation.
But superb looking though, aren't they?
They're lovely, yeah. I mean their posability, I don't really know. I didn't assemble them. I cleaned them up a little bit once I was given them, but I didn't actually assemble them. So I don't know if their posability is particularly varied. But that being said, I think they've come out okay.
I really like the shoulder pads. I like that yellow. I like the grub and the sort of dirt that you've got fading to the lower edge of the shoulder pad. Very nice.
Thanks. Yeah, they come out okay, haven't they? Yeah, I'll get once they're all finished up. I'll give you a couple of pictures. I'll send you some, show you how they've come out once they're finalised and the final dull coat goes over them.
I shall look forward to seeing them with their bases done.
Yes,
because that's going to set off the silver of their armor. I think
so. It's always the way, isn't it? Though once you get a project finished, once you get a miniature painted, they can look great, but it's not until that base is finally done they actually look. You can then see them all in their glory. They're going to be on a mangrove swamp forest style base, so rich, lush greens and dark browns.
Okay.
So I'm yet to puzzle that one out exactly how it's going to work and how I'll get that done. But so I think the colours will be quite important. The certain how saturated or desaturated I make the colours themselves, how luscious I'm going to make it depends very much on how quick I can get them done. But I've already got some firm ideas in the bank for how they're going to look once they're finished. So it's a watch this space kind of situation.
Very nice. I shall look forward to seeing them completed and having their posh looking decals on them.
That being said, Grumsworth, what about your hobby? Have you been up to much this week, hobby-wise?
Spot of hobby this week, quite a spot actually, 40k related as well. I've been putting together and painting the Necron Warriors from the Indomitus box set also.
Good.
Going for the sort of the colour scheme that they're using currently up at GW there, the very bronze, warm looking metal Necrons there. So soak them all in a can of the Rune Lord brass. Nice even coat of that. Lovely to get such a cool metallic base coat out of a rattle can. Went on really nicely, really silky.
Nice and smooth, huh?
Nice and smooth, which is, you really need it for Necrons as well, because so much of their armor is just either nice hard edges or smooth, sometimes dented and punctured plate about them. So that went on really nicely. I was really impressed with that. First time I've tried the product as well. Then they got a little bit of a blast from the airbrush with the Vallejo Silver, which again kind of does the same job. It goes on really silky smooth, nice coverage. Just a Zenithial highlight, just blasted down top of them, just to take a little bit of the warmth out of the bronze, leave them a little colder looking. Then they got a massive, almost dip. I used a huge great tank brush to soak them in a mixture of Reekland Flesh Shade and Agrax.
Okay, nice. Quite a warm tone, actually, isn't it?
It is still quite warm and earthy. Yeah, the silver does. It brings a little bit of cold. It pushes it through, so you've got a nice mixture in the miniatures. Actually, the lower half of them looks grubbier, beaten up and more tarnished, whereas the more exposed areas, their shoulder pads, tops of their heads, most of their sort of skull, faceplate type job, that's all more silver.
Quite weather beaten and weathered.
Very haggard, weathered, exactly. I used a contrast paint, Basilica. Is it Basilica Black? Basilica Grey is the job, it is, yeah. Yeah. So I used that to work on the sort of the main skeletal parts of these Necron Warriors. Some of their outer skin, their arm plates there have fallen away, failed to regenerate, all of this sort of business. So they actually look quite beaten up. But I wanted to get in and do a slightly different colour for that more, the superstructure of their bodies. All their spine is always exposed. You've got sort of kneecaps, elbow joints, back of the skull.
All the workings. All of the
workings, yeah. So the Basilica Grey there did a lovely job at just changing the hue of the metal already down on them.
Yeah, I imagine there's almost a bit of a textural difference, isn't there, at that point?
There is, yeah. It makes them quite matte in those areas as well, which is a nice contrast against the shine of the metal.
Yeah.
Whacked in some simple black, blue highlights on the weapon areas, and then went in and did just a very cheap, dirty and easy kind of green glow effect.
Nice.
With some watered down white, some watered down a scorpion green by Vallejo there. And I think they've come out quite posh for probably only about 10 hours work.
That's not bad, actually, is it?
Yeah, it's about an hour per Necron.
Yeah, I like how you've put the glow actually on some of the battle damage as well, as if that's the I don't know. I kind of imagine it as the Necron energy, the nanotechnology that self-repairs these creatures. Or
there's an inner radiance there.
Yeah, I like that. I think that works quite nicely. Why did you decide on green and not say some of the more outlandish like pinks and yellows and reds that you see from a lot of Necrons?
I actually sort of I considered for quite some time a nice red, a nice warm red glow, because I think it would have done well against the bronze and the silver. But in the end, I want to get these guys done quickly. I knew that I could do green really simply with very, very little effort.
Right, fair enough. Yeah.
It is almost a two-stage highlight. Some of the green watered down with some medium to make it super thin, just whacked over the raised areas that I painted white
Yeah.
to give that soft glow.
Very nice. And it's the classic, isn't it, as well? I mean, let's not forget that.
It is a bit of a classic. Yeah,
The
yeah,
classic
yeah.
and best.
Necrons glow green. But I just wanted to get these guys done rapidly, still to a decent standard, and with quite a simple color scheme as well.
Have you decided on the base?
Well, I've not decided on the base. I'm leaning towards grey because it's not going to clash with anything else on the model. Maybe with a few
cool,
tufts.
won't it?
It will do, yeah.
Add to the coolness of the miniature. We're talking a lot about temperature, actually, on miniatures, aren't we, today?
We are. It's an important... You have to consider it. Well, you don't have to consider it. You can throw whatever colours you like on there, really. But it is useful, especially if you're painting huge, great masses of miniatures. See, together, when they're all stood around with each other, before they've taken grievous casualties, all of that green kind of pops out. Even though it's only on small areas, like in their eye sockets, the little beans on their guns, and some of the pipe work, as you say, some of the battle damage as well has a little bit of a green glow. But on mass, that's a colour that really stands out. As they take some casualties, as they're removed from the board, that green glowing look, that'll fade down.
I like that, though. That's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah.
It's quite contrasting. Yeah, they look amazing. I can't wait to see them when they're finished. So, yes, a good dose of hobby salve this week, huh?
I think we've done all right, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we have. Yeah, I think we have.
40k based.
And Indomitus based by the sounds of things. So somewhat current for us.
Somewhat current. And that is rare for us, isn't it? Let's face it. Okay, so let's delve now into some new releases.
So, I've decided on my favourite new release this week, which is, I think, something we're doing for the first time here on the Preamble, isn't it? Discussing something that's brand new. We're going to try and do it somewhat regularly, I guess. But for me, it's the Venari Aurelin Wardens from the Lumineth, I believe, from Age of Sigmar.
That's right.
To me, they're still high elves, but they're not really high elves as I know them. So these Venari Aurelin Wardens, they're the spear-armed or pike-armed soldiers of the Lumineth armies. These guys look really cool. I think they're out now, so they are available. They're £36.50.
That's quite a price tag. How many do we get for that?
You get 10. You get 10 in there.
Okay.
You get sort of, from how I understand it, you get sort of a variety of bits you can switch in and out, customize as you like, weapons, shields, helms, accessories, that sort of thing. But I think what I like about these is that they sort of share an awful lot of similarities with other tropes and other designs that I quite like. They're not all entirely high elf as I classically know them. There seems to be a little bit of Greco style in there, and a little bit of
definitely,
almost a little bit of the sea elf going on that they've got here. The with some of their colours, especially from the way the studio have painted these miniatures.
Yeah.
I also quite like the way there's lots of different textures going on here. They're large flowing robes, the shields that are flat, their feathers, the scale mail that they're wearing as well. There's a nice mixture of textures in there that I think actually bring these models. They give them quite a... They're still very elegant in how they look, but they stand out enough for me that I think, actually, you know what? These look really good. Despite the fact you only get 10, I do like them. I can sort of visualize them on the battlefield in a phalanx formation. Probably
shoulder.
I can imagine them on a square base more than a round one, but
can't we all? Definitely. They look like they were made to sit on square bases.
They do. They were. Let's be honest, right? But these guys, no, they look really nice actually, and they're quite big. Although talking about size-wise, their weapons, I think they class as more as spears in my mind than pikes. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. Say your standard elf is 6 foot-ish.
Yeah.
Plus, maybe. It depends, doesn't it? They look, I would say they look longer than Games Workshop spears.
Perhaps,
Do you
yeah.
think?
I think that's probably true, actually. Yeah, but I mean, a pike in my mind is really long. I mean, you're talking sort of
Well,
12 foot,
12,
15 foot
16
pikes, aren't
foot.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
But that being said, if they're high elf pikes, then they can be high elf pikes or lumineth pikes. That's fine.
fair
Um,
enough.
but I like these guys. They sort of they form the front lines. You know, they're like that typical shield wall kind of
Mhm.
approach. They're good at repelling charges and holding objectives, that kind of thing. So I do quite like these. Apparently, their spear tips or pike tips are armed with are made out of sun metal. I don't quite know.
Sun metal.
I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to do a little bit of study, I think, into sun metal. And those that are pierced by sun metal blades apparently are slain in a heartbeat.
Wow, they are
Mm,
some pokey-looking spear pike jobs, then, aren't they? This
yeah,
sun metal, perhaps it's fallen from the stars.
perhaps,
Maybe it
yeah.
is that meteoric iron type business.
Maybe it links into the whole shard situation. Maybe they've
Maybe,
scavenged some of that up, nabbed it up, and they forged it into their elvish weapons.
yeah,
Um,
such as they do.
yeah. So I do like them actually,
Mhm.
and they can be buffed, with magical abilities. And if I was to have a Lumineth army, I'd like to see large groups of these, in formation, marching inexorably across the battlefield. I think they just look
Yeah,
really cool.
big
Um,
blocks of 30.
Oh yeah. I can just imagine them stepping off of a boat or landing craft, or
Mhm.
even forming up outside the opening gates of a large Elvis fortress or something. I think that'll look really nice. And these guys
Yeah,
they really look the part, more so than a lot of the other Lumineth miniatures that they've released, in my opinion. I think these are
well,
the best of that bunch. To be fair.
I'm sure we can bring up some of those at a later date.
Oh,
Because there are some stinkers in that range. Although
mm.
I think there are some other decent parts too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that was quite a difficult one actually, because there's lots of for this particular occasion, out of all the new
Mhm.
releases that were on Games Workshop's new release page, these were the ones that stood out to me the most. But there were a few others on there, a couple of Black Library bits that I really liked the look of, and I thought, oh,
Yeah,
maybe that'll be
yeah.
my pick of the week. But no, I think it's got to be these. It had to be a miniature. For the first time that we're tackling a new releases segment anyway, it had to be
Mhm.
a miniature.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I have done precisely the opposite from
Oh,
you
right.
here. Yeah, so I would like to point out to all you good folks my favourite release of this week, although to be honest, maybe it was towards the tail end of last week. But either way, we're splitting hairs here. It's Days, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's a piece of animated work, a very, very fine piece of animated work, courtesy of the good folks at Netflix there. What they've provided us with recently, I think about the middle of the year, was a kind of a prequel to the seminal Transformers the Animated Movie from the 1980s. A fine chunk of my childhood
Ah,
was spent watching and rewatching this hallowed film.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
an even larger part of my adult life, as long and haggard as it has been spent quoting this film, almost verbatim, right? So imagine my glee when I saw Netflix had brought out a 6 episode sort of mini series almost animated, showing the events before that film.
Wow. Okay. Now that's interesting. Now I've been watching Voyager recently on Netflix, and I'm surprised this
Strong.
hasn't come up in my recommended for you list. What's
Well,
going on? Where have they
well,
been
that's
hiding this?
that's what I'm doing right now, Burlokk. I'm recommending it to you.
Very
You should get in on it. Yeah.
good.
And so
Okay.
should anyone that's tuned in listening to this right now. If you have a love of Transformers, I would actually say if you're not a big fan of the old school Transformers, there isn't going to be a massive amount in this for you.
Mm.
But if you are a big fan, you will be very, very pleasantly surprised. They've got a whole slew of the old characters in the old style. They look like they did in the 80s,
Okay.
which is lovely. They've kept the same sort of character traits. Megatron there is kind of brilliantly powerful, slightly darker, pretty heavy on his schemes, and prone to fits of destruction.
Yeah.
Your Optimus Prime there is more than your generic good guy. He's almost like he's close to being your God Emperor of the Transformers, really.
Oh, I guess
You know,
so. Yeah, yeah.
he sort of carries the spiritual burden of this robotic race. So the characters are all really nicely locked in. It is like watching a history of how the Transformers came to the point where the movie begins. It is being brought out in 3 parts. I think it's going to be 3 sets of 6 episodes each. I really recommend you go back and watch them. But newly released, 26th of September, I think it was a trailer for the next block of these episodes called Earthrise.
I can't believe this has come underneath my radar.
Well,
Madness.
your radar needs to be cranked up a bit,
I
Burlokk.
need to get it maintained, I think.
You get the tech priests on it, get them to have a look, polish it up a little bit, swing some incense and say some prayers, because this thing is superb. I think
is the animation very akin to that from the 80s then? Is it that same style, that same artistic direction? Has it been brought up to speed a little bit more with modern animation and modern effects, do you think?
It's very definitely a modern piece of work.
Very
It's
good. Okay.
done in a kind of a 3D animation.
Right,
It
I
looks
understand,
to
yeah.
be an interesting mixture of, it has a slightly hand-drawn style about it, but obviously created today with today's technologies.
Yeah,
so it
nice.
does have a different look about it, but they've tried to keep the content and the visual representation of Cybertron and the characters from the Transformers stories. They've kept those as they were, rather than making alterations to them. So again, Megatron, he still looks like he's wearing a huge pair of black pants, for example, and his head still has that kind of unusual, almost bullet sort of shape about it. Prime still turns into a big old articulated truck. So they've kept almost all of the old, dare I say it, the kind of Transformers canon.
This is before they've gone to Earth, though.
This is set on Cybertron itself. And this teaser trailer, just released, shows the beginning of the next 6 episodes, which I think are going to tell the actual tale of the journey from Cybertron to Earth itself, which is where I think the series will conclude. And then after that, we'll just be able to watch the movie again, and
seamless.
Happy days. Happy days for me. Yeah.
Wow.
Really.
Very good. And the voice acting is good, is it? Does it sound quite crisp?
The voice, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, really, really good. Again, they've definitely taken a look at the movie itself, the animated movie itself from the 80s, and they've tried to get people who sound pretty much perfect. Soundwave still sounds beautifully mechanically modulated in his voice. Starscream is still a whiny bitch. Prime is still sort of almost like your sort of classic barbarian hero vocals, almost.
Very good. Yeah.
And Megatron is still brilliantly sinister.
So they've maintained the Transformers idiom from back then.
Just what I was going to say, brother.
Was it? No, it
wasn't. Idiom is intact. It's really, really intact. Interestingly, what we've seen so far, there's been some combat going on, obviously, as you'd expect. The Transformers are in the middle of a civil war, essentially.
Right.
But it's a little bit more story-driven, which I was really pleasantly surprised by. And watching this new trailer for Earthrise, the next set, it really it brought up an interesting new addition, in as much as there's kind of a third faction of Transformers, which will be met on the journey towards Earth. So I think some of the characters who are not present in the movie, I think they're going to get picked up on the way to Earth, which I'm really looking forward to. I can't wait for it to be released. As soon as it's up, I'm going to spend the day tanking it, and then really resisting the urge to just go straight in on the movie again.
You'll be entirely incontactable, won't you?
Utterly, yeah, exactly. I will have vanished. And then when you see my remaining Necrons painted up like Megatron, with glowing red eyes, huge black pants, and just shiny metal with a maybe a purple Necron sign on their chest.
Are you going to paint
You
your
know what would
monolith
have
like an
happened?
Arctic truck?
Oh yes, what an idea!
The
Right, I'm
Optimus
scribbling
Prime
that one
monolith.
down.
Yep, do it. Make it happen.
So I think that's really worth a look. If you're interested in Transformers and you haven't seen any of it, check out the first block of episodes. Check out the Earthrise trailer. You can find it everywhere. It is stellar. So this is where the magic happens, folks. Today's card has been submitted by one Brother Captain Condarian, and the card is called the Prodigal Sorcerer.
Oh, the Prodigal Sorcerer. What a treat this is.
Isn't he just?
Well done, Brother Captain. This is a great choice. This takes me way back to the early days of Magic. I mean, this particular card here is from 4th edition.
It is, yeah.
It did see some earlier printings, in fact, from Alpha, I do believe. It was in Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Revised. It was in a lot of the early sets. But this particular card...
It's been an almost constant, hasn't it? I think there are about 16 prints of it.
Oh, there's so many. Yeah, there's so many of this one. And that goes to show that, it's obviously solidly in the firmament of Magic the Gathering's their storied history. So yes, this is the Prodigal Sorcerer. He's a blue card, as you can see. He's on this version, it just says Summon Wizard, but he is actually a human wizard creature. He costs 3 mana, 2 generic and 1 blue, so a total of 3. I think we should probably look at the artwork first. Because
let's dig into that.
Yeah, to break this card down will be quite interesting. There's a nice lot of flavor text there. This is actually done for us, this artwork, by Douglas Schuler.
Well done, Mr. Schuler.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few points I can bring up about this artwork. How do you want to tackle this one first, though, Grumsworth?
I think I would start really with saying that this is definitely the old school of Magic as far as art is concerned. Because what we've got here, we've got something that looks like it's been hand painted or otherwise coloured. There's a lot of those nice, very natural, soft transitions between the colour. The background is kind of interesting. I think we'll probably dig into that coming round to the end of it because there's something to be said about it. The guy himself, our Prodigal Sorcerer there, who I'm sure has gone by many names in circles of Magic because he was very, very often used, a very, very playable card. But the guy actually depicted here has a lot of character himself there.
Yeah, he's
very interesting beard, strange choice of clothes, knowing look on his face, large nose.
He is quite eccentric in a way, isn't it? Which kind of sums up a wizard to me. He's got that double pointed beard, which is obviously white because he's an old man.
I like to think that he might be a younger man.
Oh, maybe.
And his use of the magical arts have turned his beard a snowy white.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. His ears look a little pointed, and I don't know whether that's just the perspective of the painting, perhaps playing tricks with me. But his ears look a little pointed, so like maybe there's not just the whitening of his hair, but maybe the pointing of his ears as well, changing him a little bit.
He does. He has the almost a classic Magic user's face, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah.
His face looks eccentric, as his character probably would be as well.
I like the fact that the sort of as the tilt of his head goes, the rearmost eye there, is slightly more closed than the front one, like he's eyeing you up a little bit, getting the measure of you, perhaps.
Isn't he?
He's giving you the weather eye.
He is. He's giving you a weather eye. That's right. He's chosen to equip a fabulous wardrobe, also, hasn't he?
Oh God!
I mean, we can't miss that. His robe in gold and black there, very regal. Even if it is a robe, it might be some sort of doublet, possibly.
Perhaps even a harness. Who knows?
Something like this. Maybe even a harness, some form of esoteric armor.
Yeah. Yeah, the gold obviously gives him that regal look, and also the purple, I think, of his good old beret that he's wearing.
Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah,
very proudly donning that.
That was the source of many tales Actually, yeah. I actually remember getting hold of many of the Prodigal Sorcerer, this version of it, this piece of art, and jury rigging it with my own paints and brushes to resemble a well-beloved character who used to hang around at our local magic club.
No, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, who was prone to wearing a not dissimilar hat.
Oh, very good. The old Prod himself, was it?
It was the prod himself. Yeah. Like I say, it is the older style of art that they used for Magic the Gathering. I still really like it. It has a lot of charm and character about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes more modern cards, it's just a different style, a different art direction.
Really
Here we
is.
have a sort of quaint, unusual looking old dude dressed up in some bizarre finery, painted in quite a natural, like lovely looking way, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but we mentioned it briefly at the beginning of this little
The
segment.
background.
Here. The background. Now, it looks to me actually. Now it may not be, but it looks to me as though this his body and his head and his hat, the actual figure himself of this wizard, it looks like it's been cut out and put onto another background. It probably hasn't, but because it stands out so much from the background, I think it's why it gives me that impression.
I am in total agreement, actually. I think the background almost looks like it was put in after the
Yeah.
figure had been painted. Maybe he was part of another piece, and he's
Maybe.
been transferred onto this very simple, nicely complementary color to the character himself.
Sums up the
But
color
as
of the
we
card
said,
being blue, doesn't it?
it sums up the color of the card also. It is so close, in fact, to the border of the blue cards at the time that I do wonder whether this particular piece was submitted as just the character with no background.
That could be
And
it.
they added the background in themselves. We may be completely wrong here.
Perhaps, yeah, but I mean, the colours they match the border, as you say, so exactly.
They do.
In my opinion, that it seems a little convenient, perhaps, and
A little
also another
too convenient.
Yes, another thing that sort of makes me wonder if that is true or not is because there seems to be a little bit of an orangey red glow on this wizard from below.
I see that.
To the bottom of those golden bands, there seems to be a little bit of an orange glow, as if it was some sort of environmental reflection. Also on the top of his shoulder, the side of his neck, it just looks like there's a bit of an orangey, fiery glow perhaps going on, which in the early days of Magic, I mean, again, this is just sort of spitballing an idea here, but maybe the artist Douglas there was given a brief to say, we want something, we want a wizard, he needs to look human. And perhaps in those early days, the idea of wizard is just fireballs and lightning bolts and, very aggressive magic.
Traditional wizard stuff.
Yeah, so it could have been pulled from a composition with fire going on in the background, perhaps, that gives that orange glow. And then once the design team had got that piece of art, realized actually we want this to be a blue card, the red just takes it away from that blue.
Pushes it out of that area.
Yeah, it just doesn't fit quite right. Maybe that's when it may have been changed or even sent back to the artist to say, could you just take the background out and do it blue for us? There could have been all manner of ways around that, but there just seems to be a few little clues to suggest that there may have been more going on here than meets the eye.
I think it may well be the case that this character was submitted with a more a redder, fiery background, possibly when they wanted to use it for the Prodigal Sorcerer. That I'm sure that they already had lined up. Maybe not quite sure how it works. Maybe they did send it back and say, if you could just whack us on a simple blue background, that would be lovely. And if you can use these blues, that would be great too.
Yeah.
So we might be completely wrong, but I think that's a fair read of the situation with our Prodigal Sorcerer's art.
I think so as well, yeah. But a nice piece, though, and understated. He's plenty of character, but very befitting of the era.
Very evocative of those early days.
Yeah, very true, very true. But let's have a chat about his mechanics, shall we, in game, because he does stuff.
Go on. He does.
It says here that in his rules text that you tap the human wizard, you tap him to one side, and Prodigal Sorcerer deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Which kind of is a bit of an odd one for a blue card, isn't it? It's almost like a red mechanic because it does direct damage. It does only do 1 point of damage, but it's quite nice. I quite like that. It's got quite a lot of utility in a blue deck. It's quite useful. What do you make of it?
So this ability, it became known as the prod. Other cards that had a similar ability tap to deal a certain amount of damage without spending mana. You just render the card inactive for the rest of your turn to do this 1 point of damage there. Anything with that sort of ability that was referred to, they're a prod. They can prod, or I'm going to prod you.
Back in the day, that's true. Yeah, I remember hearing, prod you for 1, prod you for 1. It's now become known as ping you. It's now ping you for 1.
Ping, that's right.
Ping. But back in the day, it definitely was for me in my gaming circle as well. Prod you for 1.
Yeah. so this ability, it took on this character's name in that way, and I think became really iconic because of that.
Yeah.
I think it is a superb ability, actually. I know it's only 1 point of damage, but as we all know, to get that last point on a big, nasty-looking creature that you really need to die, or when you find that sorry day when your opponent is on 1 health point, and the only thing on the table is a Prodigal Sorcerer. He seals you the deal. He wins you the game.
It's true, and it puts your enemies what they call on a clock. Because if you can keep him on the battlefield for 20 turns, that's 20 points of life your players.
That's done. Yeah.
But there's interesting mechanics. Mechanically, it's quite interesting. He can work synergistically with lots of other types of cards and archetypes as well.
Definitely.
There's an awful lot of combination plays you can put on there, combo plays, where you would have your Prodigal Sorcerer in play. You would tap him to do a point of damage. You would then use another spell or another ability to untap one of your cards.
That's right.
And then you'd then be able to activate him again. And you can kind of get yourself in a bit of a loop where you can keep on cycling that same set of mechanics where you would untap him with another ability, tap him again. So you can end up using this sorcerer indefinitely. So you can get one shot a player in 1 single turn if you get the right combination of cards out.
Yeah, you can get a lot more value out of him because untapping cards is not by any means easy, but there are plenty of options to do that. And it is interesting that this is a blue card that deals direct damage. So it's one of your few, certainly back in the day, it was one of your few options in a pure blue deck to have a little bit of direct damage in.
Yeah.
And you definitely could. You could build decks not entirely around this card. You can have your quad Prodigal Sorcerers in your deck. But I think he is a card that synergizes really well with all manner of other abilities. Anything that destroys creatures after they've taken a single point of damage.
That's right.
Things that piggyback off of just damage going in. It doesn't have to be vast, but he can do it to anything as well. So he can prod a player or a creature. Which makes him really flexible.
That's it. And I think blue decks tend to suffer against opposing decks that they call it going wide. Lots of small creatures.
Yeah.
Blue decks are typically known as control decks. If you have like a big fatty on the battlefield, a big old creature, 12, 10 in stats, and it's going to wreck you, if it hits you a couple of times. Blue decks can usually manage that. They'll just definitely control it somehow. They'll keep it tapped down. They'll keep it frozen or whatever it might be.
Or just take it and add it to your own forces, isn't it?
They could do that as well, So blue decks have got good ways of controlling individual pieces. They can keep a tab on things, whereas they tend to suffer actually against decks that have lots of smaller creatures on the battlefield because they can't control every single piece. So having this guy on the battlefield, if you've got lots of smaller creatures against you, there's a good chance a lot of those will only have 1 toughness. So you can just use this to sort of keep your enemy's larger force in check just by pinging a creature for 1 here, prodding a creature for 1 there. And just it's it, and that's right, pruning the creatures down on the opponent's side. So it really is a good card, I think. Certainly back in the day, power levels wise, how they've creeped up over the years. from some of the more recent cards they've released, especially. Perhaps he's not quite up there where he used to be. He's certainly not a staple in any, not a staple in any decks anymore. But if you're playing an older format, Legacy, Vintage, there's a very good chance you may see the prod turn up from time to time.
He may grace your table. And he has a beautiful piece of flavor text, doesn't he?
He does. Would you like to reel that off for us?
I can reel that off for you.
It's lovely.
All of you. Occasionally, a member of the Institute of Arcane Study acquires a taste for worldly pleasures. Seldom do they have trouble finding employment.
Nice.
He whores out his services, doesn't he?
He does. And that's probably why he's got such finery. You know, he's got a good amount of gold in his pockets.
Exactly. Exactly right.
Very good.
Yeah, a fine choice, I think, from Brother Captain Kondarian there.
I think so as well. I do. I think so as well. But I think that brings us towards the end of our session for the day, Grumsworth. Thank you all for tuning in. There we have a code in our show notes below. It's good for 10% off everything at roguesgaming.com, and it helps us out a little bit as well. So if you like what we're doing here, leave us a thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Preamble. You've been listening to the Preamble. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, and many other podcast platforms. And if you want to contact us, just send an email to thepreamble@gmail.com or find us at The Preamble on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Your hosts were Grumsworth and Burlokk, brought to you by roguesgaming.com. Special thanks to our contributors, our spotlight artist, and of course, to all of you. See you next time.